Hello, my name is Gil Penalosa, and this is Cities for Everyone, the webinar. Every other Tuesday, I invite fascinating people from around the world to share experiences and knowledge that will help us create affordable, equitable, and sustainable cities. I was born in Bogota, Colombia, where as commissioner, I led the design and construction of over 200 parks and took a small program called Ciclovia, Open Streets, and increased it to over 120 kilometers, 75 miles of car-free streets every Sunday and holiday, where more than 1 million people walk, bike, run, shop, enjoying the presence of each other. 17 years ago, I created 880 Cities, a non-profit organization based in Toronto, Canada, where I live. Last year, I ran for mayor and came second with 100,000 votes. My aim was to change the conversation in creating a Toronto for everyone. I've been fortunate to have worked in over 350 cities in all continents, sharing and learning. Based on all experiences, I developed master classes and keynotes customized to each city. But Cities for Everyone, the webinar, is a way of giving back. It's always free and hopefully always interesting. Please invite others to join us every other Tuesday, anyone who cares about cities and people, equity and sustainability, about all living older, healthier, and happier. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. We have people from over 24 countries, hundreds of people, on a fascinating topic. I've been living in the Toronto area now for 23 and a half years, and a project that has caught my attention is Regent Park, because this was social housing done in the 1940s, 1950s. And then at that time in Canada, the social housing was done by the federal level, and then it was downloaded to the provincial, and then it was downloaded to the cities. And a lot of this was not working well because of the design, because of the support. And at the beginning of this century, a little bit after 2000, it was very clear that Regent Park was run down. A lot of the units were falling apart. There was a high level of crime, and even more than the level of crime, the stigma against the people of Regent Park. All of a sudden, people, even if they were looking for work, they would put someone else's address because they don't want to put an address from Regent Park. There were no grocery stores, no retail, lots of unemployment, gangs, and so on. And the city had over 2,000 units of social housing. Many of them just paying 30% of their income for rent. So if they got $500 of rent, then they would pay $150, and so on. But so how to fix it? And they had some pieces of land, and some people thought of selling these pieces to market rate housing. And then enters Daniels Corporation and Mitchell Cohen with what I think is a brilliant idea. Said, instead of selling and doing this market rate, why don't we put everything under one umbrella? Everything, the social housing, how to renovate 100% of the social houses into brand new units with amazing parks and community centers and libraries and everything, but without the city having to spend any money. So he said, well, if we could have those over 2,000 units, and we could do another 5,000 or 6,000 market rate, and we put everything more or less under the same basket, then we're going to end up with a neighborhood that is 1/3 social housing, 2/3 market rate, but everything the same quality. And all of the sudden, so many things would start to change, because there is a huge problem. We've been talking in the last few weeks about the walkable cities, the 15-minute city, but we need the 15-minute city to be for everyone. It's not only for the person living in a $1 million condo that goes to the coffee place. No, we also want the barista and the people cleaning the floors and the coffee place. We want people of all ages and backgrounds and incomes to be living in the 15-minute city. So today, my guest is Fatima Saya. Fatima Saya, it's interesting, has an MBA from Toronto for the Rodman School of Management, but she works in social impact. And she is going to take us through the history of what happened in Regent Park. She's going to tell us about 6 building blocks for inclusive communities. And I think that these lessons are not only good for other areas of the greater Toronto area, but they are applicable anywhere in the world. And as I always say, this is not about like on the computers that we copy and paste. No, but we can adapt and improve because every city is different, every community is different. Fatima, welcome, and thanks for having accepted our invitation.
Thanks so much, Gil. Thanks for having me. So hi, everyone. My name is Fatima Saya. I am a senior manager of social impact at the Daniels Corporation. And typically, you know, when we think about our elevator pitches and how we're sharing what we do every day on our social impact team, we sometimes struggle to fit things in short snippets. Lucky for me, today we are here to spend a little bit more time with you all. And so you can think of this entire presentation as a little bit of an elevator pitch on what I do every day and what Daniels has been engaged in over the last 38 years of our history. Before we get too far into that, I'll come back to Daniels in a minute. I did want to just share, you know, a little bit about Toronto. Gil has shared with me that the audience today is quite international, and so I wanted to make sure that we were all on the same page in terms of the city that we're really talking about. So, you know, Toronto is a large city, and when I say large, I mean that it really is a megalopolis, and it has grown significantly in the last 25 years, adding over 2 million residents. There will be another close to 3 million residents welcomed to our city in the next 25 years, and you know, a hugely diverse city as well. 57% of the population, according to the 2021 census, identified as belonging to visible minority groups. We are the second largest financial center in North America. And we're growing significantly when it comes to real estate. So in the third quarter 2022, Toronto had 230 active cranes in the sky. And according to the Toronto Star, that is 5 times higher than the next highest city, which is Los Angeles. And you know, that is enormous. Of course, with all of that growth and development come different sorts of challenges. One that, if you're Canadian, of course, we've heard about significantly over the last couple of years in particular, but I'm sure, you know, others are hearing about it internationally as well as housing affordability challenges. And so that's something of a reality here. And I'll talk a little bit about how Daniels has approached that as well.
Fatima, so some people are saying that they are hearing an echo. Can you, is there any issue with
let me find out.
With the audio?
I don't think so. Let me see. Oh,
maybe
some
next
people
to
say
the
echo, some people say no echo.
Okay, maybe if you can speak maybe a little bit louder or something, and we'll
Okay,
see.
well, I will. Let me double check which audio I'm connected to. This will be better.
Much better.
Are people feeling this is better?
Yes.
Yes, there we go. Thank you so much. No, that's helpful.
Much better. Thank you.
Mics, and it was the wrong mic. Okay, great. Amazing.
Yeah, look, all thumbs up are coming up.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay, so now I explain what it is that Toronto has so many cranes. So, okay, tell us about it. Keep going.
Yeah, so I mean, this really is just a testament to
if you want to do 1 minute summary of what you just spoke.
Oh, sure, I can do
because
that.
it was hard to understand in some parts.
Absolutely. So I mean, you know, it is on the slide as well. You know, the idea is that Toronto is growing significantly, significant amount of development happening on the ground. 230 active cranes in the third quarter rather of 2022, the most in sort of North America. Los Angeles is second and has 5 times fewer cranes in the sky than we do. Housing affordability, of course, is a challenge that I think Canadians are very familiar with, and those internationally might have also heard about, something that comes hand in hand also with growth, and something that Daniels has been working to find solutions to as well over the last 38 years. So I'll talk a little bit about that as part of our presentation today too. So the Daniels Corporation is a developer builder. We were founded in 1984 by John H. Daniels, who we sadly lost this year. And he was a real estate industry leader, philanthropist, and visionary developer. He wasn't. He was known as being the CEO of Cadillac Fairview Development Corporation. He was also the founder of the Toronto Sun newspaper and the Cineplex Corporation. So his legacy is really large and wide. We currently, have been working over the past 38 years and currently have 4,864 homes under construction, 18 new communities under construction, over 425 employees. And, we've built over 35,000 homes and apartments in master plan communities, mixed income, multi-generational, including cultural, institutional, and commercial and retail spaces as well. So we are a builder developer with a breadth of experience. Gil talked about this a little bit, and one of the things that's a little bit different about the way that we approach real estate is we really think about our purpose as being about building inclusive and sustainable communities. It's really about creating a better future for all of the folks in the GTA where we build. And getting into how we do that, we recently released a report talking about the building blocks of inclusive communities and the building blocks that we consider to be, what do we consider the building blocks of inclusive communities? And it really is an approach with 6 components for us. And so that's really what I'm here to share with you as well today, is the 6 building blocks of inclusive communities according to our sort of Daniels philosophy of how this is achieved. So the 6 that we're going to talk about today are a whole of community approach, mixed use development, affordable housing, community engagement, spaces that build social fabric, and local economic development. And what I'm going to do as well today is talk about these building blocks through the lens of Daniel's experience building in Regent Park as part of the Regent Park revitalization over the last 16 years. And when I share a little bit about Regent Park, you'll understand why it really is a great example of how these different tools can be leveraged to build the kinds of inclusive communities that we really want to achieve through city building. So starting a little bit about Regent Park. So Regent Park is a city in Toronto's downtown east. Originally, it was built as a social housing neighborhood in the late 40s, early 50s by the federal government, and it included 2,083 units of social housing or social housing homes on 69 acres of land. So an incredibly large community. If you're from Toronto, it's sort of the area that is bordered by Gerrard to the north, Shooter to the south, River to the east, and Parliament to the west. This was really a time of significant development of social housing in the 40s, 50s, 60s by the federal government. And it really was based on a garden city planning rationale. What this really meant was that the community had all of its streets sort of ripped out, lots of inward facing housing, large tracts of green space. You can see it a little bit in this photo here, although there's been some casualties with parking lots, which sort of happened subsequently through the 70s, 80s, and 90s as people needed space for cars. But the idea here was when you take out the streets, you'll have spaces for people to come together, kids to run around, 40s and 50s, fear of cars as well being part of the issue. And while this worked well for a short period of time, it quickly became clear that taking out the streets, exclusively focusing on residential homes in the neighborhood was not a sufficient way to build a complete sort of community. And then further to that, cuts to social programs, which occurred across the developed world through the 80s, 90s, and in addition, the successive downloading of the social housing portfolio from the federal government first to the provincial government of Ontario second, and then finally to the city of Toronto really meant that maintenance was not kept up. And this is a story that's true for much of social housing across the province, but then also across Canada as well. In addition to that, successive waves of immigration really resulted in Regent Park becoming one of the most diverse neighborhoods in the country. And we know that newcomers, particularly through the 70s, 80s, and 90s, though welcome, were not provided the kinds of supports that they required to really make a go of life in Canada. And so the community just continued to be under-resourced and faced significant challenges. So over the last few decades, 90s in particular, Regent Park was really seen as a place to avoid significant gun violence, gang violence, and socioeconomic hardship faced by community members. Despite that, it really was a tight-knit community. It was a community where there was a significant amount of activism, engagement, sharing of resources among residents. And the stereotypes and the over-policing that it experienced really helped to strengthen those community bonds, which endure to today and make a really big impact on how the community has been able to really endure despite the significant changes of a revitalization. So in 2002, Toronto Community Housing Corporation was created as an arm's length agency of the City of Toronto. And it automatically, sort of overnight, inherited 58,000 units of social housing across the City of Toronto, becoming the second largest landlord in North America next to New York City. And as part of that portfolio was Regent Park, which, as I've alluded to, had experienced significant difficulty with respect to maintenance, with respect to the sort of physical isolation it experienced by being disconnected from the grid of the city, the social isolation of really being exclusively a social housing neighborhood, and then the economic isolation as well, just being purely residential with very little to no commercial or retail or community spaces within it. So looking at that challenge, Toronto Community Housing engaged the Daniels Corporation to be the development partner for 53 of the 69 acres of the Regent Park revitalization. And the approach to the revitalization was really twofold. It was, on the one hand, to focus on, of course, rebuilding the social housing, which was significantly deteriorated in quality and in terms of maintenance, but then also maintaining the social development or creating opportunities for social development as well. So it sort of had a two-tier approach. The plan was based on a phased approach. So, 53 of the 69 acres through a phased approach. This was really done to accommodate resident relocation, demolition, new construction, and then, everything that had to go in, including roads and servicing after, the roads had been taken out in the 40s and 50s. So looking at the phasing plan here, just to give you a bit of a sense of the community. So 69 acres in total. Phases 1, 2, and 3 are the 53 of the 69 acres where Daniels has been the developer. Phases 4 and 5 are to come in future years. So those that Daniels has worked on really, it's the lion's share of the community, and included areas for low-rise townhomes, high-rise buildings, community spaces, including athletic grounds, and an arts and cultural hub, as well as retail and commercial spaces too. And I'll go through all of these in a bit more depth. So some key figures. So Daniels has constructed over 3,063 market condominium homes. 631 are currently under construction. 346 market rental homes, 1,200, just over 1,200 rent geared to income TCHC replacement units. So these are social housing replacement units that have been completed, and another 189 under construction. We've also incorporated seniors rental homes, as well as 219,000 square feet of commercial and retail. Toronto Community Housing has also added 403 new affordable rental homes that we've constructed, and this is all in the 53 acres. So significant intensification of this area, for sure, which started out with 2,083 units. Okay, so coming back to these building blocks, we're going to go through them and really think through or talk through how Daniels has incorporated these as part of the Regent Park revitalization. And I recognize that the quick brief history of Regent Park. So if there are questions, I'm actually going to pull up the chat to make sure that there are no questions, and I'll try to answer them if they come in. Okay, so the first really of these philosophies for Daniels is this whole of community approach. So we really think that as builders and developers, we have an opportunity to advance inclusion, build resilience, equity, community wealth, affordable and accessible homes, create local economic development, really thinking about city building, right? And we understand that physical construction alone can't achieve our collective city building efforts. And building inclusive and resilient cities where everyone belongs, we must go beyond buildings. And what does this really mean? In the context of Regent Park, really, it was about looking at the community at a bird's eye view, not thinking block by block or street by street, but looking at the whole 69 acres of community and understanding that a development in one corner of the community would have an impact on the overall makeup and fabric of the neighborhood. So when it comes to the 6-acre park, when we began the revitalization, the 6-acre park was only meant to be built in phase 5 of the Regent Park revitalization. Thinking early on in phase 1 and looking at how a main part of this community revitalization was to bring together Toronto Community Housing residents, existing residents, and bring in new market residents and create a sense of social cohesion and social integration. And how can you do that without creating spaces where people can come together? And seeing the building of a park in phase 5 as really a missed opportunity, we worked with the city and Toronto Community Housing and the city councillor to move up the building of the park so that space could exist for folks to come together. Another one is the Regent Park Athletic Grounds. So thinking about, the kinds of spaces that people wanted to interact in. The park had a huge impact. But we consistently got feedback as well around, okay, park's great, but where are we going to play cricket? Where are we going to play basketball? Where are we going to, run and practice for our track clubs? And so thinking about the kinds of spaces that make an entire community cohesive, where people can come together, we worked with partners at Maple Leaf Sports Entertainment, worked with the city and Toronto Community Housing to really carve out space that hadn't been allocated for an athletic grounds to an athletic grounds, because it was something that community wanted and something that community was going to be able to come together in. So really thinking about the whole of community approach, this idea of going beyond block by block, beyond street by street. We think about complete communities as being more than the sum of their parts and how they fit together. And a real sort of learning from all of this, and a big takeaway here is that, taking that broad, long-term view of community is really crucial. Thinking about existing relationships, the relationships that you want to foster is crucial as well, to really make that whole community work.
Fatima, a question. So
Yeah.
Can you go back to the previous slide?
Sure.
Initially, no, this one is fine. there were over 2,000 housing units, right? Or most of it or all of it social housing.
Yes.
The project completed, how many units will there be altogether?
There's going to be just over, well, for now,
Approximately.
approximately, it'll be just over 7,000 units.
Okay, it's very important for people to understand that there were over 2,000 units that were being deteriorated, were in very bad shape. But then there were no resources to improve them or to fix them or to change them. So a big part of this magic is that if the city, if the public sector provides the space of the 2,000 units, but then you can sell at market rate another 4,000, that means that all of a sudden you have the funds to create brand new, every single unit social housing became new, right, Fatima? And also the beauty of this is that all of a sudden in these magnificent public spaces that people are looking at, the parks, the skating, the swimming pools, you find people that live in condos that one bedroom might cost over $1 million Canadian dollars, or US maybe 800,000. And next to it is a building exactly the same, but where people are paying 30% of their income. So if their income is $500, then they are paying 150. If their income is 1,000, then they pay 300. So it's this makes this magic that to find the funds while at the same time creating a better community. So
yeah, absolutely.
Go ahead. Sorry for the interruption, but I wanted to clarify to the people participating the magic, how to that the big challenge was over 2,000 units in very poor condition, very stigmatized community. When people said, "Oh, I'm from Regent Park," people, almost even companies didn't want to hire people that were coming from Regent Park. So it had to be totally all of this complete transformation, but now also you have a community, a completely mixed community.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, you're totally right, Gil, and I apologize for glossing over that. So just to clarify for folks, the idea behind the revitalization in terms of how it was going to work financially was that Toronto Community Housing had a $2 billion backlog of repairs that they had to complete across their portfolio in the early 2000s when they were created. And thinking about how they were going to even approach that, the thought of changing the density in some of these communities to accommodate the demolishing and then rebuilding of social housing would create space for, the selling of land to developers that then would help fund the rebuilding of social housing. In the case of Regent Park, the first two phases of the revitalization were a public-private partnership between Daniels and Toronto Community Housing. But that really was the idea that, density would have to change, homes would have to be added so that the social housing could be rebuilt. It was part of the financial model. And so that's a really great point, Gil. And of course, that does add community members, and in the case of Regent Park, there's been those rent geared to income social housing homes that have been replaced or are also continue to be replaced, and then affordable homes through Toronto Community Housing that have been added, and then also market rental and condominium homes that have been added as well to create that mixed income community. So the whole of community approach really is about that bird's eye view, thinking about the long-term vision for the community, right? Thinking about, okay, we have this plan. It says no athletic grounds, no cultural center, yes, a park, but really a lot later, and just thinking strategically about how they all come together and why not an athletic grounds if it's what community A has identified as being an important priority in the neighborhood, but then also, create additional opportunities for community members to come together. And if social cohesion is a key desired outcome of the revitalization, which it was, and I think, social cohesion, social integration, inclusion are desired outcomes of all of our city building efforts, then really being intentional about creating those spaces is important. And we'll come back to this as well in some of the later sections. So thinking about our next sort of approach or philosophy here when it comes to a building block of inclusive communities, mixed use development. And this isn't news to those of us working sort of in urban development or real estate in general. It's something we talk about quite a bit, but thinking about, mixed use development as an added diversity, right? So we know that diversity creates vitality and resilience. Mixed use development, where we want people to live, work, play, that's just as important to creating vibrant neighborhoods. And so we've really taken this approach to try to harness the power of mixed use development as part of our building inclusive communities, and in particular in this mixed income community in Regent Park. And on the one hand, that entails pretty standard, mixed use development approaches, like incorporating commercial, whether that's retail or office spaces. And, thinking strategically in Regent Park, which didn't have a grocery store or a bank or a coffee shop, and making sure we were hitting all of those core services, right? That was a really important part of our commercial approach in Regent Park and mixed use development. Independent cafes as well, the core services that you might want to have, restaurants, cafes, banks, car rentals, that kind of thing. For sure, those are clearly sort of a baseline importance. But in addition to that, there are other ways to incorporate sort of a mix of uses that are a little bit different. So something that we've done in Regent Park is incorporate artist work live studios. And this is something we're really excited about. Over the past year, in fact, we've been working with the Black North Initiative in Toronto to identify Black artists to move into those artist work live studios. We know that Regent Park, highly diverse community, a significant Black community in Regent Park as well, significant community of creatives in Regent Park as well. And so understanding that artists have often difficulty accessing affordable spaces to live in big cities, understanding as well that Black artists are in particular disadvantaged from accessing those kinds of spaces as well, working with a local organization like the Black North Initiative to really help bridge that gap. So we have 4 work live studios in Regent Park that we've been doing this work in. We've got 1 artist already moved in, 3 coming this spring, and so we're really excited about that. In addition to that, thinking about other uses like community cultural hubs, and I'll talk a little bit about this later, but I wanted to touch on it here. Mixed use isn't just about, again, commercial and retail. Having the work live artist studios are really important too, but thinking about all of the other organizations, art-based organizations, community-based organizations that need spaces to come together, to meet, to have programming, community and cultural hubs are really crucial as well. So that's been part of our approach to mixed use development too. Another part of mixed use development that I think that we don't often think about as intentionally in the development industry as we could is around local employment. I think we have this understanding that, right, if you have a mixed use development where people can go to a coffee shop, maybe they have an office next door, there are restaurants, there are other sort of retail stores, that kind of thing, that will create, the kind of integrated community that we want just by virtue of these different elements being there. And sometimes that's enough, and other times, it's important to identify the opportunities for things like local employment or local economic development with these commercial and retail partners. So something that we've done in Regent Park as part of our commitment to creating local employment is leveraged our relationship with our commercial tenants and the retailers and office uses in the community and said, how can we create employment opportunities for community members through your presence in the neighborhood? This means that people locally can get jobs in their neighborhood, jobs that they can walk to and therefore won't be late for, jobs that are going to, support their career development and growth, but in the context specifically of a social housing neighborhood as well, that are creating the pathways to sort of life stabilization that is really, really important as we're thinking broadly about community building and sort of our responsibility in Regent Park to create those opportunities as well. So thinking about really the takeaway here, so not just commercial uses, but a spectrum of affordable housing, affordable artist work live studios, spaces for not-for-profits as well, which is something that we've done through our sort of community commercial program, trying to create opportunities for nonprofits, social enterprises to access retail spaces at below market rates. All of the opportunities that these provide as well, like local employment, like capacity building, are really, really crucial. The next building block that we really talk about here is affordable housing. And, in the context of Toronto, the context of, I think what we hear often these days in particular around affordability in Canada is really important. So thinking about how city building for us is a shared responsibility, and affordable housing is a part of that. We consider it a fundamental infrastructure of our city, of a resilient city. And wanting to make sure that we're incorporating affordable spaces, homes, so that folks of a range of economic backgrounds will feel welcomed. So talking a little bit about our affordable home ownership programs, we've had a significant number of affordable home ownership programs that we've piloted and supported over the years. So in particular, we've had 3 shared equity mortgage programs that we've created that have created direct pathways to homeownership in Regent Park. We've had 2 programs, Foundation and Boost, that were implemented early on in the revitalization, and they provided down payment assistance for first-time home buyers with government funding. And they were sort of administered by the Affordable Housing Office at the City of Toronto, right? And we really played a leadership role in the creation of those programs, which were modeled after programs that we had implemented in other communities that we had built in particular, Daniels Lakeshore Village. And these programs were really highly successful. So we had 17 families living in Regent Park in Toronto Community Housing that became first-time homeowners through this program. And then through the Boost program, 211 individuals and families became first-time homeowners sort of overall. And while these have been a success, it has been increasingly difficult for community members and folks actually, who qualify. It's been harder for them to qualify over the years as home prices in the GTA have soared, as the sort of required incomes to carry mortgages has increased as well. So because of that, fewer and fewer community members are really able to qualify. So understanding that this is a challenge, we've really thought creatively about other ways that we can find opportunities for affordable home ownership. And one in particular that we've implemented over the last year is called the Partnership for Affordable Homeownership. So the Partnership for Affordable Homeownership is a down payment assistance program as well that has been fully funded by Daniels. We've contributed $5 million specifically for this program, and it provides down payment assistance for up to 50% of the purchase price of a new home at a particular building that's under construction in Regent Park, sort of the final market building that we're developing as part of the 3rd phase of the revitalization. And this program is exciting because it's specifically tailored to Toronto Community Housing residents who have lived in Regent Park or live in Regent Park, at some point in the past 20 years or so. And that's been incredibly successful already. 9 community members have purchased homes, become homeowners in the Daniels on Parliament condominium as well. We've also piloted some affordable rental programs too. And so this, at one particular, at Evolve Rentals, which is a market rental program in Regent Park. And this program has really been centered on a public-private partnership agreement with
Wood Green Community Services, which is a community service organization, as well as the City of Toronto. And the idea is to integrate long-term affordable residences for mother-led families through Wood Green's Homeward Bound program. And so this is another, program that has been piloted with in collaboration with the City of Toronto through provincial housing funding, as well as City of Toronto initiatives. So that's something else that we've collaborated on. And so here, thinking about creative solutions to affordable housing challenges being really possible, and thinking about that sort of innovation around it, looking at support from not just the private sector, but working collaboratively with the philanthropic sector as well, really allows folks to achieve home ownership, but also, affordable rental opportunities. And so that collaboration and partnership is really key. Another one of our building blocks is around community engagement. So here we're thinking about public engagement being, a very standard part of the statutory planning process. And for Daniels, we really think about building inclusive communities really requires engagement that goes beyond what's required by those statutory processes.
Fatima, one question. Could you round up in 5 minutes so that we can take some questions from the
Absolutely.
that are participating? So
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, about 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thanks. So, thinking about how we engage in that community engagement, and is one of the big ways is through what we call listen and learn tours. So thinking about community engagement not starting or ending when construction does, thinking about community engagement as something that's ongoing, that informs the development process, that informs the kinds of priorities that are identified as well, whether that be, things like an athletic grounds or community cultural hub, or prioritizing, safety in design, prioritizing local economic development as well. And I'll talk about some of these pieces too. So, for example, the Regent Park Social Development Plan is a document and process that has been created in the community that identified key community priorities. It identified in particular community building, local economic development, safety, and also sorry, the fourth one is escaping me, but the four community sort of identified priorities through the social development plan is something that Daniels has worked to incorporate into our approach to development as well. So thinking about, when the community identifies gardens, when the community identifies, youth programs as priorities, it's something that Daniels has been able to support. So this comes really to the idea of taking that time to engage with community through the process to listen and learn about their priorities. So we've talked a little bit about the kinds of spaces that we've built, but I really want to sort of hone in on why these are important. So another building block for us are these spaces that build social fabric. The built environment is really important to how people come together. And we understand this and have incorporated that into our approach. So I talked a little bit about Daniel Spectrum, right, which is an arts and cultural hub in the heart of the community. It houses community agencies working for community, creating opportunities not only in things like arts education or film or music, but also as a hub for grassroots groups to come together, for the neighborhood association to exchange with community members and connect. And this is a really exciting space as well, because the way that it was integrated into the community was really as a community-owned asset. And so it's a really crucial space. In addition, thinking about, how we build some private spaces as well. So this here plaza at our Due East condominium has been a really important part of the spaces where folks in the community can come together and create, different community building opportunities, such as the cultural bazaar, which takes place in the summer there. So thinking about spaces like this and incorporating them early on. Another one that we're incorporating or going to be opening over the next year is called a living lane, which also sort of is found between a condo market building and Toronto Community Housing building. So thinking about these spaces, like, laneways as inactive spaces in general, but kind of flipping that around. So, I talked about the work-live units earlier, and the work-live units are found in this laneway, along with public art installations, spaces for folks to sit and connect and engage, and thinking about the location of this laneway, connecting folks in the community, creating those opportunities for social cohesion is really crucial. The last one here, and thank you, Gil, for the time. I won't go too much longer, is local economic development as our last really important building block. So thinking about how development is a process that should generate positive outcomes for all stakeholders. And this is something that we believe really strongly. We want to create opportunities through our work. And that might be through initiatives like local employment and training initiatives. In Regent Park, we've had two really important training capacity building programs. One focused on the construction trades, which is a very clear opportunity working in development. And the other is with youth, to provide them opportunities to connect with employers who are in development adjacent industries like architecture firms or design firms, or even law firms and banks. And so thinking about how we create those opportunities for community members is really important. Another is social procurement. So thinking about the budgets that we spend or inevitably will spend in communities, and how we can leverage those to create community benefit. So thinking about, in particular for Daniels, local art. That's been a big part of our approach to social procurement in Regent Park. We have a local art procurement program where all of the art purchased for our communities are purchased through local artists, significant number from the Regent Park neighborhood, but also downtown Toronto as well. And the idea here is that, we could go to buy stock art or, buy or hire on big international artists to complete big art pieces. But the local industry in Toronto of artists is significant, and wanting them to have an opportunity to build on their capacity is important. So social procurement is another really important way that we've created those opportunities.
Thank you very much, Fatima, for such an amazing story. The images were very powerful. I think it was very important how you stated over and over the importance of the community, the different community groups, the people in the community related to culture or to sports or to any other kind of activity, being active participants. I also think that it was important the role that the city played, the mayor, the councilors, the city staff, and of course of Daniels, the developer, because you needed all of these different stakeholders getting together. And I thought it was an excellent example. And it will be really interesting to keep looking at it over the next 10, 20, 30 years, how it develops, how to have the community having more and more direct impact on how the parks, how the libraries, the schools, how all of this is linked together, how everything that is public clicks, and how the community has much more decision-making on how to run it and how to move forward, so that this works 52 weeks of the year for everybody, all income, all abilities, all backgrounds. Thank you very much, and I will see everyone in 2 weeks on the webinar Cities for Everyone, where we try to have always interesting people, and it's always free. Thank you.